Welcome to the Disc Golf Prescription Podcast, your weekly dose of disc golf. Hello and welcome to the Disc Golf Prescription Podcast. I am your host, John Nicholson, and today, if I click on this little button right here, we have special guest Aaron Gossage with us. How are you doing today, Aaron?
I'm doing good, John. Thanks for having me. I always appreciate being on the podcast.
Of course. This is our first ever virtual episode on the podcast. I don't plan on doing them if I don't have to, but you're in Colorado right now. I'm in Texas. That's a little bit of a far drive to make to record a podcast for this week, at least.
Yeah, I've made it a few times, and it's not a fun one to make. You don't need to.
This is, I like full transparency. This is actually take 2 of this very beginning segment of the podcast because I did not turn my notifications off on my phone. And when you're recording on your phone, that's a problem. So now that we've safely gotten into the podcast, I kind of want to talk about, starting out, this week's episode is going to be very different than previous episodes. So far, I've done an introduction and I've done some interviews, you being one of those interviews. And Aaron and I are good friends, and we're going to explore a concept of Aaron and I doing basically like a monthly episode together and talking about hot topics that are current in disc golf and even answering fan questions. So I'm excited to get into this and see what the Goose has to say about things.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll be interesting or not. We'll see what I have to say.
Every conversation I have with you is interesting, so I'm sure it'll be great. But before we get started, guys, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I hear other YouTubers say ring that bell. I don't know. They don't say it like that, but I chose to say it like that for some reason. So do all the things. Yeah, we would really appreciate that. And also leave some feedback for us. If you like the format of this episode, if you'd like to see something slightly different. Oh, I almost forgot. We need a name for when we do this. I don't have any actual like thoughts on names, but like I don't know. We've got the lion and the goose. We've got, you could just take out the lion goose, because then that way it's like a double entendre and it implies that geese don't tell the truth. I don't know.
Yeah, it's honest.
I'm not really sure. We're workshopping the name. We might just name this episode "The Goose is Loose." I'm not really sure, but if you guys have any suggestions, please let us know. We are in desperate need of name suggestions, as you can tell, because I am not responsible for that. I am responsible for that. I'm not responsible enough for that, I guess is what I should say. All right. So to get started, let's see here. Let's start with kind of a review. And I'm going to ask you first, Aaron. I'll go into mine briefly too, but how has this last year on tour, like, overall been for you? Give us like a quick summary. Like, how do you feel about it?
So just my thoughts in all is kind of, I like to set goals for myself, and this year was kind of like a full success beginning to end in the goals that I had set for myself to accomplish. So like kind of going into the season, my goals were to play a tournament better than I did the previous year, have a better finish, get my rating higher than it was last year, and moreover, halfway through the season, I would really like to make that match play because it's in Colorado. I get to play back at home. So like halfway through the season, I kind of accomplished pretty much every goal I set for myself up until that point, and I had to kind of reanalyze and see where I would like to like reset my goals for the second half of the season. And my biggest thing was I know that disc golf kind of has a short attention span. So even though I'd played well at the beginning of the year, it'd be really nice for me to have a good finish towards the end of the year so people will still, recognize my name at the end there, and to have a good placement at the Pro Tour Finals. So I had the amazing Worlds finish. I put in a ton of work to make that happen. Really happy about that. And it got me into the bye first round at the Pro Tour Finals, and I even was able to make it through another round at the Pro Tour Finals as well. So kind of like all the little milestones I set for myself were a success. It was a fun tour. Everything's growing so much, and I just had a great year. Had a lot of fun, and hoping I can do the same thing next year.
No, that is awesome. As somebody in your corner, well, my wife is over here too. So's my dog. I can't ask my dog if she's in your corner, but I would assume she is. But we had a ton of fun watching. We got a lot of extra time to watch this year. Had some injury downtime to watch, so that was super awesome to see you have a great year out there. Next, we've talked about last year's tour. Let's talk a little bit about the schedule for the upcoming year's tour. Have you seen the 2023 schedule, or even started to like kind of plan out your year yet?
Yeah, I actually looked at it like a couple days ago and actually started making some decent plans with it. So I have a basic feel for what it's going to look like and kind of what my plans are. And I'm a big fan of it. I think that it'll be a really solid tour and kind of moving in a good direction. I think maybe 2-3 years down the road, it'll be kind of a little bit more finalized and have a really solid solution. But I think we're moving in that direction for sure.
Yeah. I am super excited for it as well. I have it down on my notes right now looking at it. I was very stressed planning our tour. We have 3 weddings of close friends this next year. 2 of them that we are like legitimately a part of. And so like we have to be there. and so I was like, oh gosh, what dates are those going to coincide with? But what parts of the tour are you most excited for? Any specific courses that you want to get back to? Or I know somebody plays really well in Emporia.
For sure. Yeah, it's a good point. The biggest thing for me is I heard that this next year they were going to switch the start of the season to Florida. And I was not a big fan of that because I like spending the off season in Phoenix. I've got some family there, works really well for me. And I can just go right over to Las Vegas Challenge, right back to the Memorial, and that all works out great. So I'm really happy they left that the way it is at the moment, just kind of selfishly for my sake. So that's the first big thing. They brought in a few more of the courses that I was really happy with. I guess Harmony Bends is still a Silver Series, but I'm glad that that's still part of the tour. That's one of my favorite events. They moved it to later in the year, kind of like it was last year, to kind of make it playable. And then, like you said, I think they really reworked things well to hit different places at good times. So DDO is one of those for sure, where it was just 2 completely different tournaments last year. DDO was one thing, and Worlds was a completely different thing, purely based on how much wind there was. And I think that moving DDO back in the season like that will make it far more fun and interesting.
Far more hot. It's going to be so hot.
It will be hot. Look at that. But looking back at DDO, I took 3rd place in that, my best finish up until that point ever for me. And I never once had fun, like beginning to end of any of those rounds. It was just so stressful, so tough, so challenging. And then on top of that, I went back and watched the coverage, and it wasn't interesting. I was like, wow, this isn't fun to watch. Just people struggling to have any idea where their discs are going. So I think as a whole, Worlds was a lot more interesting and a more fun experience for most players. So I'm glad that it's kind of going to be a bit more of that style. Hopefully.
Yeah, awesome. Before we talk a little bit about the rest of the schedule, I wanna throw back to a funny memory from Dynamic Disc Open where we played at similar times on the first day. We hopped on the bus to go back to the parking lot afterwards, and you were sitting next to me, and you said you were looking at scores, and you're like, "Oh wow, like you played well," and you were acting like you didn't, and you like were right there, like you played amazing, and you continued to play amazing, and I did not. Well, I did after the second round at least. But you said to me, like, we both played really well. We were in like the top 15, and you're like, did you have any fun out there? Like, that was so stressful. And everybody else around was like, it was very, very stressful. Like, is my disc gonna be in bounds? I hope I read the wind correctly. Because tight OB with that much wind. Whew.
Yeah. Well, kind of put it in perspective, I had two different thought processes. And hole one at Jones Supreme, you kind of have to make a decision. Are you going to go for the island or are you going to lay up, right? And at Worlds, I had that decision more of like I think I can make the island. I'm going to go for it, versus I could have laid up. And obviously that would have been a better choice for myself since I missed it. But at DDO, I was like, that didn't even cross my mind. What I was thinking about is, how do I not take a 5 on this hole? And I was like, pray to God that I make it, which isn't very likely in that wind. And then just lay up my putt and take my 4, because I wasn't convinced I could take a 3 if I laid up. So, I mean, like, it's just funny that I had two completely different mindsets for how to play hole 1, just based on how much wind there was. And I ended up taking the same score all 4 times I played that hole. So.
A 4 every time?
Yep.
Okay,
every single time.
4 is a great score on
all
that
4
hole.
times. Yep.
Oh, that is awesome. One of the things I am excited to see, I heard rumors early in the year that we weren't going to play Waco again. I'm a super big fan of the Beast down in Waco. It's just a really fun course that has like 9 wooded holes, 9 open holes. It's really unique and I really like it. I'm also a Texan, so I'm biased. But so I love to have a Texas swing. And I knew that States was not going back to Tyler. And so now States is moving to Houston. And then I knew Belton had like a clock on it, because I knew the city was destroying 2 of the best holes to put in like a parking lot or something. And so I had no idea what was going to happen with the Texas swing. So when they announced they were having the Open at Austin, run by the same people who were running the Open at Belton, and then now we have Texas States in Houston, which I lived in Texas my whole life and I've never played in Houston. So I'm excited to see what those events are, because I don't think anybody knows right now. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I'm on the same page on Waco, though, too. One of my favorite courses. I really like the fact that half of it is woods golf, half of it's kind of in the open. You're guaranteed to have wind, so it's going to be windy when you're out in the open, but you get a reprieve from that when you go back into the woods. It's got some awesome holes back there. It used to have some par 5s. Par 5s are kind of one of my favorite things on a course, and those courses still basically do have 2 par 5s. They just call them 4s because they think we're too good. Because of Paul 18.
Yeah, exactly. It's all Paul's fault, right? He's been responsible for par changes at multiple courses.
I'm allowed to play at least another year for any of my problems that I have.
Let's see here. I had one other thing I was going to talk about on the schedule, and I completely forgot about it, as my ADHD typically does. I'm really excited to get back to the Northeast. Lots of stuff in the Northeast. It's typically, and Midwest and Northeast, and a lot of that is very similar. Oh, the other course, 2 changes I wanted to talk about were North Cove. I've heard really, really amazing things about North Cove. It's coming on tour as a Silver Series this year. It's in North Carolina. I'm excited to play that one. And I was very interested to see that Music City is an Elite Series again. So it hasn't been an Elite Series since it was a national tour. So I'm curious to see what sort of course changes they make out there, or even what courses we play out there. So that'll be interesting coming up.
Yeah, for sure. I think my biggest issue with the whole schedule is the Silver Series are a little bit tough to like make work with my schedule. So I'm basically going to try to play 3 and hope for the best that I have 3 good ones. And there's a bunch more that I would love to play, but they're just really tough. I think they've thrown like the one in Rochester, New York, is right before Worlds.
It's like too close.
Yeah, you can't justify playing that tournament because you would get 3 days to practice for Worlds. So, I mean, they've got a couple spots like that where it just makes it really tough to make happen. They've also got the Mid America Open, which I would love to play, but it's right after the European Open,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And that makes it tough because you have to travel back. And so you're not getting quite as much time unless you get your flights perfectly timed and everything. So I do like the new changes and the new Silver Series, but I think it's going to be tough to, some people are going to play them all, but it's going to be tough to do that.
Yeah. Although I do like how many opportunities there are to play Silver Series, and I do think that those are really good for people who may not be on tour full time. Because like you said, you're only able to try to squeeze 3 in. I'm trying to do the same thing. Part of that is because of our wedding issues we told you about earlier, but I was able to find 3 that I'm pretty sure I can make it to, and yeah, try to make maximum points at those since they only take 3 anyway. So that will be
Yep.
that will be good. Well, awesome. Let's move on from next year's schedule and let's talk about some fan questions. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
All right. So the first one might be my favorite question. I don't know. This comes from Joshua. Should Zach Melton let his hair grow back? Whew. Heavy. I need your opinion on this.
Oh my goodness. I think his hair is awesome. Before he shaved, I mean, he still looks good shaved, but he had some really cool hair beforehand. So I would probably let it grow back out. And I'm also lazy, so like I don't know. That you can see I haven't shaved in a while. So that's kind of my thought process. Is I'll always let it grow back out. You can shave your head, but it's only temporary.
Yeah, I mean it is a lot of his brand cuz like his logo is the Bob Ross basically. That's what I would refer to it as. I can't refer to it as the Melton. Or you could, I guess. The Melton. I like it. It's great. But yes, Zach, if you are watching, listening, all those things, 1, we got to get you on the podcast, buddy. 2, grow that hair back, man. But mad respect. Get shaving all that off in front of everybody was great. I loved it.
I want to throw another one at him though. If he shaved the beard with it, it would have been like a whole nother step of just like.
That's true.
And I'm not saying it would be a good thing, but it would be another step of commitment. Maybe make another bet or something like that for the beard as well, and then.
I like it. I'm pretty sure Zach has a baby face. Zach, are you hiding a baby face underneath that beard? I think you are. We want to see it. All right. Next question from Jonathan. Not me, though. What do you call... Oh, this is specifically for you. What do you call the blue nuke that Jomez refers to as the blue bomber? Do you have a name for that guy?
So everyone's been calling it the blue bomber, the blue blaster, different things like that. I gotta be honest. Before the tournament started, I was like, oh, I need a stable nuke in my bag. So I just grabbed one that I got off like the double print shelf at the factory, threw it in there, started throwing it, and now it's the most famous disc in my bag. So I didn't have any name for it. I've never named any of my discs, but the Blue Bomber is probably the one I hear the most. So that's kind of what I've been going with.
Now you have to start naming your discs. So anything you throw far, it just needs a name immediately. And you should give it just like the blandest name ever. Just like...
Well, I could just like do different colors, and then I could have the purple bomber, and then I could have the yellow bomber.
They're all bombers. They all go very far, and this is the color of it. You're welcome.
Then I could have a fairway driver that's like the yellow doesn't quite bomb as far.
Perfect, but goes straightish. It's great.
But goes.
All right. So no name for the blue bomber apart from the blue bomber, Jonathan. All right. This question has been on the podcast before, but Nick decided to ask it again And Steph and I have had some discussions about this question. So thank you, Nick, for providing this again. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized elephants or one elephant-sized duck?
Duck-sized elephants versus an elephant-sized duck.
100 duck-sized elephants.
Yeah, but the ducks are so mean. I got to go with the 100 duck-sized elephants.
Yep.
Yeah, the little guys.
So I did not want to affect you with my opinion, but Steph and I have discussed this, and we think that it is probably like most men will answer what we answered and most women will answer the opposite, because any woman we've asked has said the one, just because there's one, and they're like, we'll trip it, like it's got little legs. And then like we're sitting here like, no, like ducks are scary, like I would just punt a bunch of duck-sized elephants, like that's fine. So
Exactly. It's I don't know. You could just spend them off forever. It could be an infinite number of. It doesn't need to be 100. You could do any number of them. You just gotta get in your routine and make it happen. But the duck, man, that thing, it's what nightmares are made of.
facts. That's a big beak. So I just want to let everybody know that you heard it here first. Aaron Gossage could fight off an infinite amount of duck-sized elephants as long as he does his routine. That's fantastic. Thank you, Nick, for the question. Next time you ask it, I will seriously consider not asking it again, and then I'll probably ask it again. So that's what you get from me on my horrible sense of humor. All right. Oh, this is a good one. I like this. Greg asked, is there anything specific to do to keep your elbow pain-free? I should put commas when I write questions down. When throwing a lot of power forehands. So anything you do to keep your elbow from experiencing pain when you're throwing a lot of power forehands on tour.
So elbow's tricky for sure. I do not have a great selection of exercises or anything like that to work on it. That's going to be one of my things to really try to integrate into my workout program, is to build some strengthening around that elbow. For me, the biggest thing is to warm up a lot, nice and steady. You can feel it even when I do my full warm-up routine. Right when I start throwing, I'll feel just a little bit of like stiffness in my elbow. So just working that out nice and slow until you get your arm completely like loose really makes a big difference before actually starting to throw really hard. And then when you are throwing really hard, I found that keeping your palm up, I think, makes a big difference on shoulder pain and elbow, in my opinion. I don't know for sure if I just have like a good elbow or if that actually makes a big difference. But that's the number one thing that really keeps my arm together, is just like trying to stay smooth, trying to keep that palm up and not like overthrowing. I tend to throw a ton of forehands, especially in practice rounds, things like that. And I will start to feel my elbow towards the end of it. So just kind of listening to your body as well and knowing when it's like time to ease off a little bit, throw a few more backhands instead, makes a big difference. And then the last thing I would say is it's not always just sidearms. I have found that some people's putting strokes can affect their elbow as well, so be mindful of that. And then sometimes if I catch a backhand wrong, if it snaps out just right, I'll get a little bit of twinge in my elbow as well. So keep an eye on everything. Sometimes it's not just the sidearms that put a lot of torque on that elbow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to hop in with just like a little bit of very mild exercise science on this. You have a very big tennis background, so you've put a lot of strain on your elbow over a very long period of time, and your elbow has had a long time to adapt to that. So everybody's elbow out there is going to be a little different depending on your sport history and how much disc golf you're currently playing, how hard you throw your forehands, and exactly how you throw your forehands. So everybody needs to kind of address themselves as a very unique subject. Like you're going to be different than another person. If you don't have a big background of throw-in sports, you're probably going to need to manage the volume on your elbow a little bit more, because if you've had a big background of throwing very hard, you will have a lot more adaptation in your elbow tendons and ligaments, where they're going to be a lot more robust to that type of use, as long as there's no overuse there. So the two biggest things I think you can do is manage your volume. So just track how many like really hard throws you're throwing, and if you ever notice like after a certain amount there's like this pain happening or starting to develop, you can kind of figure out where that line is and work your way around it. That is the easiest way I've seen for people to do it. I think Seth Muncie was the one who recommended they have those step counters you can buy. I got to raise my hand all the way up here, where you just click it and you can count steps. You can attach those to your bag, and literally every time you throw a hard forehand, you can just like click the step counter, and at the end of your round, you'll know how many hard forehands you threw. So that is one way I've played around with like checking volume to manage elbow pain. And I loved what you said about the backhands and the putting, because it's all cumulative. We do all these repetitive motions, and if you are if there's any crossover between your forehand and like your putt, for instance, or I've even gotten those twinges in the elbow on your backhand, it's like you hit it just wrong, I guess, not just right, and you kind of like briefly like hyperextend your elbow, and you're like, ooh, that didn't feel nice. But yeah, take all of that into account and just kind of be more mindful of how the musculature around your elbow is feeling, and what you may need to do if you aren't like playing a tournament round or something, in order to like mitigate more stress on that area. All right. Oh, is this where we address your cold?
Sorry about that.
No, you're good, buddy. I'm just kidding. Let's see. The next one is from Chris. The road takes a lot out of a player. What foods are you eating to stay rested and keep up energy?
That's a great question. I will be the first to admit that my food schedule, my what I've been eating, has not been the best. I have been trying to do really good about having good breakfasts, getting eggs and protein. The whole. I like to cook a lot of eggs, some bacon, get some toast with that as well. Sometimes I'll have some oatmeal as well. So I think that that's really important for kind of getting you ready for a round. And then Ricky is also kind of in the same mindset of when I play a disc golf round, I enjoy having a breakfast that's a little bit later, maybe an hour or so or two before I play my rounds. And then I just go like 8 hours without eating while I play, like I warm up, play my rounds. And then afterwards, I just like devour some kind of dinner. And usually I'll go out and get some food, something like that. And it's one of the things that I really want to try next year to work better with. I'm trying to switch over to more of like an Airbnb life next year, which will make it easier to have a kitchen, have a refrigerator, have a bunch of things to make things more, make it easier to cook for myself and keep that nutrition. Definitely I wouldn't take any notes from what I do because it's not great and I would like to rework it. But that's a great question, and it's something that I really want to work towards next year, do some meal prepping, and try to make that a healthier part of my daily routine.
Yeah, for sure. It's very difficult to have a set routine from week to week as far as food goes. We have a truck and a fifth wheel, so we travel around. We should theoretically have our kitchen, except for our truck didn't work for like 5 months this year. And so we were like, okay, what hotels will allow us to bring our dog? Like we're in like weird places. And so like we end up eating out a lot more than we wanted to, and inevitably not eating quite as healthy as we wanted to. But it's always just kind of, for me, doing these small things that can keep me going. Like, I always make sure, my biggest thing is always making sure I'm eating enough protein to like have good like muscular recovery. Because if I'm not eating enough protein, I know I'm going to. This is anecdotal, by the way, but typically when I don't eat protein, I end up feeling a lot more sore. I don't feel nearly as recovered. And so that type of stuff, obviously you need carbohydrates and fat as well. Those are very important. I typically get plenty of those without even trying. Now, the quality of that depends, but get plenty of those. I focus on the protein. That's the easiest one for me to make sure I'm feeling better for the upcoming day at the very least. But yes, I think we could both stand to improve our routines on food.
Yeah, the routine thing is a good point, like you said. I had like a solar panel on top of my car with like a kind of a cooler, so it wasn't like the greatest setup. But like some tournaments, there was just it rained the whole time, so I'd never got any solar power. So I'd kind of like run out of battery over the course of the week. And then other tournaments like Mid America, it was just so hot constantly that it just couldn't keep up. So it makes it tough because like I'll have to like throw out food, and then that week I have to eat out almost exclusively. Um, so it just is a tough situation, and yeah, making that more steady routine and being in an Airbnb, I think will help that tremendously.
Yeah, my one of my favorite memories from not this last year, but 2 years ago now, was I can't remember what tournament you won, but they like paid you in those like what were those meals? They're like those camping meals.
Yeah,
And
that was GoPro Pro Mountain Games in Colorado, and the Mountain House instant meals, man. Those were that was the stuff, man. I love those.
for what seemed like months, every time I saw Aaron in the parking lot at the course in between practice rounds or whatever, he's pulling out one of these meals and heating them up. And I'm like, how many of these do you have? And he was like, I don't know, man.
They were good too. I'd love to get another bucket full of those.
That's awesome. All right. This question comes from LaDonna, and this question makes me so sad. What do you do when you are on tour and you lose your favorite disc?
So this is a suggestion I have for a lot of you. Actually, I did lose my favorite disc this past year during one of my tournaments, but it's this kind of one thing you get when you are sponsored. You have more discs and stuff like that. Is I really try hard not to have a favorite disc. I have maybe 2 or 3 discs in my bag that are my go-tos. They're the special discs that I use a lot, and I don't throw them on water holes because I know that I don't want to lose them. But another thing I do is I try to find other discs that'll throw like them, and I put them in my bag, and I'll start using them, and then all of a sudden they become my favorites. So for me, especially as a sponsored player, it gets lots of plastic. I just kind of cycle through everything. So the disc that I'm using all the time is the one I'm going to throw on the water holes most often, and then if I lose it, I know that I can find a backup to replace it. So I don't have any good suggestions for you, other than if you're a disc collector, if you are, you're got those Nate Sexton Firebirds, I wouldn't throw them personally. I know that they fly great, but so many discs fly great, and you can find something that flies just like it, and that way you don't have that emotional connection. And I think it helps you play better golf. At the end of the day, if you have a disc that you don't mind losing, you're more likely to commit to the shot that you actually need to throw because you don't fear those repercussions nearly as much. So I guess, yeah, my solution is just don't have a favorite disc, or if you do, put it on your wall in your room or something like that. I'm almost at the point with the Blue Bomber where I feel like, oh man, I probably need to do this so that I don't lose this disc. That's like the first disc that has ever been named in my bag.
It's the off season, man. Take it out of the bag. So I could not agree more with the try not to have a favorite disc. It's hard. I have a lot of discs that I would just hate to lose in my bag. I'm probably one of the worst about it. I really do not like losing discs. I do whenever it is practice. I do think about it, and it influences the shot I will throw sometimes in practice. In the tournament, I don't care. I override every single thought of possibly being worried about losing a disc into throwing the shot I'm trying to throw, regardless of what could possibly happen. Yeah, do your best. Just try to have as many discs as like really good replacement backups as possible, so you're less worried about losing it. Yeah, but whenever you inevitably lose one you're attached to, it's not a good feeling. Sometimes you wade around in water for a long time. Sometimes you get cut up in the woods. It's we all do it. I promise you that. There's been many times on tour I've seen Calvin out in his kayak this year, just like kayaking around the water trying to find some disc.
Yeah, that practice round thing is interesting too. One thing that I'll do, it's a little different than what you were saying, is if I play a practice round and I do find that I'm playing a little conservative on certain holes because of the disc I'm throwing, I'll make a mental note of that to put in a different disc in my bag that I can throw instead of that during the tournament so I can actually commit to the shot. So that actually becomes part of my practice routine, is finding those holes and those discs and those shots where I need to put in another disc that I can then practice on that hole and have confidence in making that shot.
Perfect. No, that's good. That's something I could definitely add if I could fit more disc in my bag, which I can't. So that's another problem I got to work on. My wife is making a face at me right now. She judges me because sometimes I make her carry my bag or pull my cart, and I carry a lot of discs. So I'm sorry, baby.
Yeah, I've carried that bag too. It's a good one.
That is true. Aaron has been a champ this year, and right after my comeback from my knee injury, I really needed help in the Northeast. It's very hilly, and I did not want an extra however much my bag weighs, which is way too much, on my back for these rounds. And Aaron caddied for me like an amazing friend and got me through those rounds. What a guy.
I got you. Don't worry.
All right, let's see. Trey asks, how do you attack a course blind during your practice rounds?
That's a great question. I need to come up with an actual plan that I have every time. More so, I try to just kind of go by feel a little bit. But I love playing a course by myself, blind for the first time. Well, I guess it depends. Depends on if it's a course that's easy to play blind. It's nice having someone there that'll kind of show you where the baskets are and things like that when you're going the first time. But I do like making my own opinions about what shots I should throw every time on a course when I play it for the first time. One of the nice things about the tour is that we're going back to the same events. So even though some of the holes have been changed, overall it's pretty much the same course, and then I don't have to play too many blind courses. But I really like to make a plan of kind of what the most consistent shot is, what an aggressive play is, and then kind of what are mistakes that I'm allowed to make versus what are mistakes I'm not allowed to make on certain holes. And then at the end of the day, I like to make a spreadsheet, kind of like write down the 18 holes, go through a game plan, and see what it looks like. So after I played it a couple times, I have this game plan, try to stick to it, and then modify it as needed based on how my practice rounds from there on out go. Excuse me. Sorry.
You're good, bud.
Playing a course blind is always tough, especially if you're just kind of playing like a casual round and you're only going to play the course once. It's fun to just go out and see how your disc golf, instincts take over, what shots you think you should throw on the different holes. Versus when you're playing a tournament, it's a little bit different. You're trying to make a game plan. You're trying to figure out what the actual best shots are for every hole. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of the thought process as I go through.
Yeah, no, it definitely answers the question. You make a good point. Now that we've been on tour for a couple years, like, we don't play very many courses blind. The first year, like, a lot of blind, like, not during actual tournament rounds, but a lot of blind on the first practice round. And yeah, you just kind of get a feel for the course. Make sure you aren't throwing into any like blind spots where you can lose your disc. that's a big one. But just kind of I always make sure I look over. We always have like a caddy book or something that I can look over and kind of get a general feel for the hole before we go out there if I'm going for the first time. If I've already played a course, I'm not as worried about it. I just kind of want to get a feel reacquainted with the course. But we don't play too many courses for the first time anymore, so it's not as big of a deal. I always just try and go out and get my distances. That's the very first thing I do when I do find a new course is what is the easiest possible drive I could throw to get a look at birdie on this hole if I'm going for birdie, which most holes I'm trying to get the birdie on. So that's how I look at a course for the first time most of the time. But other than that, yeah, that's a harder question I think for us to answer since it doesn't happen as much anymore.
Definitely. One of the things I will say as well is caddying for you was a really nice experience because it was the first time I was at each of those courses, the first kind of practice rounds I was going through. And I couldn't have practiced during that time. So it worked out really good for me to just kind of walk the course and get a feel for it so that I have kind of a game plan in my head of what I think I'm going to throw before I actually start my first practice round. So I might actually implement that and start walking around before I actually go out and play it. Just because it gives me a different perspective and I have a game plan kind of moving into my first round.
Perfect. Yeah. So to give you guys an example of what Aaron was thinking, he was like, "Oh wow, don't throw it where John just threw it." And then he was like, "Okay, throw the shot that John just threw, but like 80 feet farther."
Usually I'm holding his bag and I'm like, "Hey John, is that where you meant to throw that?"
Rough. Hey, I'm very accurate. Okay. All right. So moving on to Alexander's question. Not disc golf question. If you could only have 3 movies on it's supposed to say like a deserted island. I put like a desert-id island. That's a spelling mishap there. But if you could only have 3 movies on a deserted island, which 3 would you choose?
Great question. So, man, the rewatch value has got to kind of be in there as well because you're on there for a while, so you got to be able to like rewatch these movies. But a couple of my top tier favorite movies all time, I would have to go with The Departed. They're all a little bit dark and a little bit interesting, but they've got amazing acting and some great choices in it. Departed is one of my favorites. No Country for Old Men is one of my favorites of all time as well. And then the last would have to be probably something like The Road to El Dorado. That one's pretty fire.
Those are
so good variety there.
Yeah, that's a great variety. So the first 2 that come to my head could not be more different. They are so different. So for whatever reason, I've always loved this movie. It's a very dark movie, but Law Abiding Citizen. If you have not seen that movie, I don't know why I like it so much, but I do. And then the next one is one of the worst movies ever, but it is just so funny to me. It is The Love Guru. So I apologize to any of you who go watch this movie because of me. It is very, very funny. And then I honestly can't think of a third. That's what you're gonna give me. Since I can't think of a third, I'm gonna go with The Matrix, which is not what I would actually go with, but I'm gonna go with it because for sake of me not sitting here just thinking. So, The Law Abiding Citizen and Love Guru, the 2 most opposite movies you could ever pick in a row. You should do it. Jamie asked, "What's the secret sauce you use in your stash?"
I don't know, man. I was just lazy. This is how the stash started. I'm embarrassed to say this at this point, but I was just like I hadn't shaved in forever. And I was like, gosh, I look like I'm homeless. This isn't very professional. So I'm like, I got to shave before this next tournament. And then a bunch of my friends were like, dude, you should leave the mustache. We'll just see what it looks like. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. It's facial hair. It'll grow back. So I shaved everything off but the mustache, and they're like, dude, it looks pretty good. And I'm like, ooh, I think I look kind of ridiculous, but I don't have to look at it, which is kind of nice. And then I played Worlds, and now it's just what it is, you know. That's just how it goes sometimes.
That's awesome.
Um, sauce. I will say it is kind of nice when you're eating some like ice cream or something like that, and a couple hours later you're like, ooh, I saved a little bit for later up there. So there are perks to it for.
Yeah, perks. We'll go with that. Luckily for me, unless I let mine get too out of hand, mine is like blonde, so like I don't even know if you can see it on this camera right now, but it's there. You just like you can't really see it. So I can be pretty lazy for a while until it's like not good. So no, definitely no secret sauce over here. All right, last fan question. Matthew asked, what changes, if any, do you plan to make to your approach to this season as opposed to last season?
I think the biggest change that I would make to my season this coming year as opposed to last year is I would try to throw my zone about 10 feet farther left on that island hole. No, just kidding. um, like I was saying, I did a really good job in the off season preparing myself to like play. So I'm gonna kind of stick with that same routine. I think I've grown quite a bit in how to prepare for tournaments and kind of this maturity mindset of what I need specifically to play well. I noticed towards the end of the season that I really wanted to putt well, and the way I was able to do that is just putting tons and tons of time, day in, day out, on the putting green before the event starts. So I know what I need to do to play at that level, and this next year I really need to just stay mentally strong, focus, keep at it, and then just know that I can compete at the top level with all these guys. So it's not going to be a huge difference between what I did this year. It's just going to be some small changes that I'm hoping will consistently put me closer to the top than I was in the past year. So I really don't want to change a lot just because I had such a good season. But I do know what I need to do to play at that top level, and I would like to start making that change and start seeing what else I need to do. One thing Paul said to me at one point is you need to learn how to win to be one of those top guys. And it's a good point that some of those guys have that killer instinct at the end. They want the drive. You can see it from Simon this year. You can see it from Rick. You can see it from Paul. At the end, they're really pushing hard right towards the end to make those strokes that they need to win the tournaments. And I think that's something that I need to start thinking more towards. And yeah, somehow figure out how to add that to my game.
No, that's perfect. That original answer got me because like I had no idea what you were gonna say, and then like it started dawning on me the situation that you were referring to, and I could just like feel myself like cringing. I was like, "Ugh, it hurts," but no, that was hilarious, and then the rest of the answer was fantastic. Yeah, for me, if I do my not serious part, I want a truck and a knee that works next year. That's what I. No, I'm just kidding. So I think my answer for me is preparation. So the past 2 years, in the off season, I think is where preparation really, really starts. And the first year, I was building a van, so I didn't prepare near as much as I should have. And then this last year, Steph and I got married, so we were planning a wedding. We were buying a truck. We were buying a fifth wheel. Like that took a lot of time, and so I wasn't preparing as much that way either. And I was trying to like get prepared like while the season was happening. And I think that's where some of my overuse happened, and I aggravated an old injury. That's my theory, at least. I can't prove that. And so I'm hoping this offseason I'm going to work. I'm shutting the season down actually after today, because today is my last tournament round of the season. And I'm going to shut it down, probably not play disc golf for a little while, and just focus on building up my body, making sure I'm fully recovered, and ramping up this preparation to be ready to take on next year so that I can actually prepare with as much volume as I want for every tournament. Because the hardest thing about this year is, like, even when I was playing, I was having to manage my volume so much to not aggravate my knee, since I was fighting through the knee injury, that it was like I didn't get to put in near as many reps as I wanted because I had to make sure I could actually play. And so that's going to be my big thing for next year is making sure I am prepared and that I'm capable of continuing to prepare. Lots of preparing. All right. So that is actually all of the questions we have for this episode. I'm going to work on like an official way that people can submit questions. We're making a new website soon, so hopefully people can submit questions. Oh, hey, thanks. Steph just like put up a sign for me. Make sure you check out Aaron's other episode as well for like an in-depth interview of Aaron. But in the meantime, while I find a way to formally submit questions, make sure to comment, like check out the YouTube. Let us know what you think of this format. I had a lot of fun just sitting down talking with Aaron. We may do a few more virtual ones before the season starts up. And then hopefully in season, we can do some in-person ones because those are always so much more fun. And yeah, comment what you think of the format. Comment what you think we could do better. Comment all the things. Just comment.
It's a name. We need a name for when I'm on here, I suppose.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need. We need something. Shoot, I might even like put out a poll or something for somebody to name it. We will reserve all rights to not name it the highest voted thing, because what was it, like there was some yacht a few years ago that they put out a poll on what to name it, and it was like Yachty McYachtface or something. And all of those end up winning, so we're not going to name the podcast episode anything like that. But yes, we would love to hear your suggestions. Anyways, Aaron, thank you for joining me. Before you leave, you got anything to plug? You got any more Goose zones out there? What you got?
It's a good question. Right now, all the Goose zones are sold out. There are some at some retailers at the moment. If you guys would like to pick up a Goose zone, check me out on Instagram as well if you feel like it. And then, yeah, here in a couple weeks, I should be getting some information about sponsors and things for next year. So I will have some information in the future about that kind of stuff, but nothing really at the moment.
Well, awesome, buddy. Thank you for joining me, and thank you to all of you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.